Hey, everybody, welcome. For those joining, welcome to webinar number 2 for the Real Estate Resilience Summit. I see people are just coming in right now. So as per usual, let's just put a quick note in the chat on where you're from. We'll have a good idea of where everybody is. You know, last week we had people from basically from coast to coast. So we'll see what's going on this week. So we've had a hurricane on the East Coast. We had another forest fire in Kelowna today. So some people are going to be on and off. So for those of you that make it, fantastic. So we got Ottawa again, Jasmine from Ottawa. We had a crazy overrepresentation from Ottawa last week. So Gillian, Toronto, that's great. It's got to be somebody from the West besides Mike and I. Yeah, don't forget to change the drop down to everyone when you go to the chat. I've already done that 2 or 3 times today. So, you know, when you're entering in the chat, just make sure you put in everybody. Oh, Nova Scotia, perfect. Ontario, Ottawa, Vancouver. So we got a few going on there. So we have a packed hour and a half today. We're going to try to get through this fabulous webinar tonight. I want to thank all of our guests for joining. So on that, I think I'm going to get going here. I'm going to share my screen and maybe a thumbs up from Michael. Anybody? If you guys can see the screen, everything looks good. Okay. So thanks for joining tonight. So this is about maximizing our current investments. So this is one that's really, really a topic that's, really people have their eyes on nowadays. There's a lot going on. So this is going to be a fantastic show today. So we're going to thank all of our guests. We have a lovely panel of ladies here, beautiful ladies, and Mike Ponte. So there we go. All right. So on the summit, you can see Elizabeth Kelly. She has put a link in. So we're actually having a bit of a competition today. We're gonna sell some tickets for the show. I want to talk briefly about the summit, even though it's 3 weeks away. There's a lot of options for summits this year, but this is the sequel to last year. So I want to thank all of you for joining. Now, the inspiration of this was, of course, last year. So we're going to try something a little fun today. We're going to launch some polls. So I'm going to launch, if I can find it here. Okay. What was your favorite part of Real Estate Resilience 2022? So there's your options. So while you guys are filtering through that, we're going to go on to the next slides. And please get your ticket on this call. We've kept the price low on purpose so that we can make sure as many people can join the summit as possible. So we're going to have a prize at the end. We're going to have a draw for a great prize for tickets sold today. So the first 20 tickets that are going to get sold, I'm actually going to win one of my mentorships. So this is a $1,500 value. We have a lot of people from my program and Michael's programs on the call today. So this is a good prize to win. So again, the first 20 that purchase tickets today are going to win. So on to that, let's talk about the webinar tonight. So I'm going to do some welcome and introductions, a little bit of housekeeping. So please type your questions in the Q&A. A lot of times they get put in the comments and they get buried in the comments, although we're going to try and find them as best we can, but please put them in the Q&A. Also, when you put a comment, please put to everyone and not just panelists. That should be a default setting that goes without saying. And on that, we'll have our speaker introductions. So first of all, we have Victoria Cluney. So Victoria has over 18 years of experience. She's also ex-military, maybe current military still. Victoria, do you want to just say a few words, just briefly introduce yourself and what you're going to be talking about on the summit in a few weeks?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cory. And hi, everybody. And to answer that question, I am still serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. I took a 2-year sabbatical and I just finished my master's of organizational psychology. And I started investing when I was about 20 years old and navigated this blindly. I did about 16, 17 years on my own. And now I'm very passionate about spreading the word and helping others through community networking and just being able to support as best I can, because I know how valuable things like this are, to be able to attend these types of sessions, because you get these little bits of nuggets and it just plants a seed in your mind on what the possibilities are. So I will be speaking at the summit about short-term rentals, medium-term rentals, even specifically a motel that my business partner Noelle and I purchased a year ago. We're almost at the year mark. And we'll talk about the pros and the cons and why that has been a really great pivot for us with all the market changes.
Thanks, Victoria. I know I'm personally looking forward to your set as well. Now, tell me, so tonight is just going to be sort of a sneak peek of what's going to be on Resilient Summit. Have you ever done a summit before? And how excited are you to be part of something like so big?
I paid full price ticket last year as an attendee, and I can
That's
tell
right.
you when I was asked to be a speaker this year, I was very honored because I just thought it was fantastic what you guys put on last year. So highly endorse it. And personally, so I've had experience organizing conferences, but this is going to be my first time doing a virtual summit as a speaker. And I'm just so excited because the amount of lineup of people that you guys have coming here is going to be amazing. It's well worth the cost.
Yeah, I remember your name. I was scrolling through last year. I think you did pretty good on the gamification prizes too, but we'll get into that shortly. So thank you very much, Victoria.
My pleasure.
All right, Noelle. So Noelle McGough, hopefully I got that right. She's in the Maritimes now. We weren't sure if she was going to join due to the hurricane. So Noelle, why don't you just do a brief intro like Victoria did and tell us what you're going to be talking about on Real Estate Resilience 2023 edition.
Sure. Thank you so much, Cory. So, I just kind of fell into the hospitality industry. As my bio says there, my husband and I ran a retreat center in the foothills of Alberta for 5 years. And when we decided to relocate our family to Nova Scotia, we actually really missed hosting people. We started a design and renovations business, which is really our skill set. And we said we didn't want to let go of the hosting side of things. So we started to co-host Airbnbs and found ourselves in the world of short-term rentals. During COVID, we quickly grew from managing 8 rentals to 30. And so I'm going to be talking about what that looks like, how you can grow your bottom line by helping other people manage their rentals while you're managing your own, as well as kind of diversifying in the short term, under the short term rental umbrella.
Awesome. Now, have you ever done a summit experience like as large as this? Have you ever had any part of anything like this before? And how excited are you?
I have been part of a summit, not as an investor, but actually I used to have a virtual event management business as well, talking about hosting. We used to host things online. So I have been a speaker, but not wearing an investor hat. I'm
Fantastic.
so excited to be here and to meet other people and to network with like.
Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a delay in your internet connection. So yeah, thank you for that, Noelle. I'm really looking forward to your set as well. So Gillian Irving from Toronto. Gillian knows a ton about student rentals, and I believe you're in the mortgage business as well.
Yes.
So Gillian, can you give us a little bit of a sneak preview of what you're going to be talking about on the summit, Resilience 2023?
Well, what I'm going to be talking about is the pros of student rental investing. And what I hope to do is dispel the terror that people have in their minds when they think about student rentals. People mostly think about them when they think about, animal house parties and couches on lawns and pretty much all the scary thoughts. But really, at the heart of it all, student rentals are such a smart and lucrative niche, and big business is investing in student rentals too. So I really just hope to bring a completely different perspective to our audience about like the benefits of student rental investing and why they are not scary, really, if done properly.
I just got Animal House in my head right now. That part Toga with John
Right?
Belushi. I gotta
I
watch that
know.
movie again.
This is it. So that's the impression almost everyone has in their hearts, and it instills total terror. So I'm gonna paint the other side this weekend and tonight.
Awesome, Gillian. I mean, I live in a university town, so I'm definitely going to take you up on those tips.
Great.
Rachel Oliver, returning for another one of my summits. Rachel joined me on the Real Estate Outlook, my very first summit a long time ago. And today is actually her father's birthday. He's turning 50. So congratulations to your father. And really nice to have you a part of this, Rachel. Rachel is, well, the rent-to-own queen, the rent-to-own person that I know in all of Canada. How excited are you to be back on the summit scene again? And what are you going to be talking about in a few weeks?
I'm really excited. I love working with you and Elizabeth, and I think what you guys are doing is very timely. It's very needed. Everyone needs to understand how they can fortify their success. So I'm really excited to be part of the guidance that we collectively can offer, because as veterans in what we have been doing, we have a lot of value. And I think that this is the time to be sharing it. So I'm known not just as a rent-to-own queen, I'm also known as the cash flow queen, because from day one, which is about 15 years ago, I was really focused on cash flow. And I know most investors are thinking about long-term and growing your wealth and holding for the long haul. I was always very focused on, how do I put food on the table? I wanted cash flow to replace my corporate job income. And I have successfully lived through various ups and downs and changes, not in just real estate, but also in the world of financing. So I feel I can definitely share a lot of experience. And I think at the actual Real Estate Resilience Summit, I'm going to be talking to 3 different types of audiences: real estate investors that have been sitting on the fence, not sure how they can start with investing and create cash flow in today's economy. I can speak to that. I can also talk to investors who have current properties that are in the red. I can explain how to turn that around and create positive cash flow. And I can also help investors who might have properties that they're looking to buy and they're running the numbers, or maybe they bought something and it's just not cash flowing. How can we turn that around? So it's really all about cash flow. And no matter where you're at in your journey, whatever your circumstances, rent to own can be an excellent solution to turn that red into a green.
Yeah, and it's often misunderstood too. And I'm just kind of learning the ins and outs of it as well. So I'm super stoked to hear you chat again, Rachel. You have a lot of different hats you wear, and you wear them so well. So for those just joining us again, the link to join the summit for tonight to get entered for the prize is in the very top of the chat. If you're just joining, maybe I'll get Elizabeth to post it again. And roll on to our last speaker of the panel tonight, which is Mr. Mike Ponte, a good buddy from Vancouver. So Mike is going to be talking. Well, I'll let him tell us all about what are you going to be talking about on the summit, Mike, and how excited are you for this event?
Very, very excited because I'm going to be talking on one of my favorite topics, money, honey. And so that's what it's all about. And it's about raising capital for our projects and stuff. So for a lot of seasoned investors that have been doing this a long time, they know that if they're trying to scale, they're going to need to learn how to raise capital. And it's a really important aspect of this. So for me, I'm quite pumped. Just like everybody else, Cory and Elizabeth, thanks for putting this on. Just the title, Resilience. He couldn't have picked a better title, to be honest with you, because a lot of challenging times, a little scary stuff. And I think that's where, as seasoned investors, you got an amazing panel of speakers, and I'm honored to be part of that. And such a diverse topics of discussion. I think it's just going to be great. And then for myself, I'm going to be talking about raising capital in kind of some different aspects of this. And so when we talk about raising capital, I'm not just talking about it from a real estate investor's perspective of where to find money, how do I get these people to kind of register, get them to invest in my deal. But I'm actually going to be talking a lot to the money partners as well, in regards to the types of people that you should be investing in. What should you be looking for from a real estate expert? Because that is so, so crucial, especially in this type of an environment that we're dealing with right now. And for you money partners that are looking to raise capital, it is equally as important to know what your money partner is, who they are, what they're going to be involved with. So we're going to be talking a lot about the pros and cons about raising capital. Should you be doing it? What should you be doing? What to look for in a real estate expert, what to look for in a money partner, and how do we create a good commonality or good relationship for the longevity of your investment as well. And it's about making sure that we have common goals, everybody has clarity to the investment strategy, and everybody's feeling confident with this. And so it is one of my favorite topics. I love raising money. I love bringing partners to the table and having a very good long-term relationship with partnerships. I'm a big believer that when raising money, it's not just for 5 years. I look at it for 20 or even 30 years in some cases, where we can rinse and repeat that capital over and over again. So I'm going to be sharing a lot about that and finding quality money partners and quality real estate experts for the long-term and your investment journey. So
yeah, and joint ventures, powerful strategy. I mean, not a junior strategy by any stretch.
Nope.
There's a lot of ways you can get in trouble with it, but Mike is going to steer us on the right side of that.
we will.
All right, so Elizabeth Kelly, who needs no introduction, but I'm going to anyways. She's kind of behind the scenes today, but you all know, my good partner, beautiful Elizabeth, former trainer, Rich Dad, probably the most experienced real estate investor that I know, and also the most modest. Like, she literally knows everything about everything. So if I have a question on anything, I test her all the time. Hey, what about this? And she has an answer within seconds. So truly, truly amazing. And everybody knows about me, so I'm not going to introduce myself. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So today is all about cash flow. And I'm going to launch a second poll here. But before I do that, we're going to look at the results of the first poll. So people that were joining last year, what did you like the most? So it was 14% was for the gamification. 71% was being able to interact live with speakers during the show. Yeah, that is amazing because you're literally in the room with the speaker doing live Q&A. It's fantastic. The virtual expo has 14% of the view. So again, thank you guys for that, answering that poll. So the second poll I'm going to launch is about cash flow. Are you currently experiencing a cash crunch or negative cash flow on your portfolio? And I'm seeing the yeses already flying in. So this is what we're going to be chatting with today. I don't know anyone who's just flush with cash these days, Warren Buffett maybe, but this is why we're all here. So there is different strategies to increase cash flow. The most common ones, selling, possibly deleverage, refinance, reduce expenses, or do a burst strategy, renovate to increase your rents, rent eviction. But there are a lot of less common ones. And this is what we're specifically going to be drilling down tonight with this amazing panel. Things that you may not already be aware of, like changing the use. For example, you could convert a commercial into retail or residential. Densification. I added a suite to one of my apartment buildings, just added a bunch of rent and value there. You can buy acquisition pieces that have higher cash flow. Change your deal structure. Do a JV. JV a deal you already owned, for example. Mike's going to talk about that too. There's a million ways you can do a JV. And there's other ways to create new income streams. So the discussion questions for today, we're going to just give you a sneak peek of them before I start rapid firing everybody. So get ready. Mike, we're outnumbered today, so we're going to have to do our best to keep up with the ladies. We're going to try to limit it to 2 minutes apiece. And there's a way I'm going to moderate that I'm going to get into, but here's the questions. So the pros and cons of the strategy. What should investors look at for income in properties to maximize your cash flow? How are you planning the future, and what are your predictions? And what do people need to stop doing, and what do they need to start doing and to be successful? So on that, I'm just going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask Rachel first because I know she maybe have limited time because of her dad's 50th. I know it's a big deal. I have my 50th coming up in a couple months, so you can't miss that. You'll be in the doghouse forever. So Rachel, pros and cons of your strategy.
Oh, I love you, Cory. 77 is the actual number, and he's very proud of it. So yes, I'm happy to dad's 77th. But
awesome.
Yeah, if we're celebrating his 50th, my goodness, that makes me just 20 something, right?
Right.
Before we start, I'm going to try to limit everybody's answers to 2 minutes or less. I have a Saskatchewan Rough Riders bell here that I'm not afraid to use. So let's try to have each answer for 2 minutes or less, or 3 if possible.
Got it. I will be very succinct. So I've narrowed down the pros to about 5 different things, and then I have only 3 cons. So pros of the rent-to-own strategy. With rent-to-own, you don't worry about first and last month's rent. You have an initial down payment from the tenant buyers, which offsets how much capital we have to put into the deal. So some tenant buyers are coming in with $30,000, some are coming in with $40,000, some are coming in with $50,000, which is huge leverage, and leverage gives us profits. Another pro is that it creates high cash flow, because part of the rent-to-own process is that we're helping a home buyer increase how much down payment they have. So whatever they came in with initially, we're trying to help them double it. And that creates cash flow each month because there's a forced savings component each month. Also, number 3, pro, maintenance and repairs. We don't have to worry about that. That's on the tenant buyer. They're handling that. So we're not out of pocket, and we don't get those weird phone calls about clogged toilets or leaky faucets. And another one, number 4, profit from cash flow is definitely a perk, but we also have the benefit of profit from a capital gain. So in rent to owns, we're getting cash flow and we're getting a capital gain. And that's a win-win for me as an investor. And then last but not least, in the pro category, is that the monthly payment is locked in based on today's interest rates. So whenever we're doing a deal, we're not trying to make it work based on interest rates that we locked in the past. If I'm locking in at 6.5% today, my rent to own numbers are based on that, so I don't skip a beat on cash flow. 3 cons. Three cons. The first con is that there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee in any type of real estate investing strategy. I wish rent own was a little bit more guaranteed, but it's not. The only thing is that the tenant buyer loses their initial down payment that they gave you, and that's as close to a guarantee as we can get, but it's still no guarantee that they're going to make it to the full end, of the 3-year or the 4-year term. Another con is that we need to sell in 4 years. We can't keep it for the long haul, but that's okay because I have full transparency into how much cash flow and how much capital gains I'm going to make in those 4 years. And then the third con is that tenant buyers can't afford more than entry level prices. So if I have $1 million property that I want to try to rent to own in today's economy, it makes it a little bit harder because there's fewer buyers who can afford payments on a higher priced property. So we're looking really only at a limited type of buyer, and that's a buyer who can afford entry level. That's it for me.
Awesome. And you did the perfect 3 minutes. And if that's only 3 minutes, I can't wait to hear what you're going to talk about in an hour when you break down all these pieces. Okay, Gillian, over to you. 3 minutes on student rentals, pros and cons, besides Animal House.
I'm going to try to be as succinct as Rachel. Okay, I would say the number one thing for student rentals is how you collect rent. I mean, in a single family home, you collect for the whole building. For students, it's by the room. So the biggest pro for us is that you can sometimes get almost 2 times the rental income that you do for a single family home if you just put students in the room. Students, university is the destination. They've worked hard to get there. So the chances of them not paying you every month are really slim, actually. So there's a really good rental security option to student rentals that people really don't think about. So not only are they likely to pay you, but there's also like a vacancy sort of benefit as well. If you have your tenants move out of your single family home, you get rent from 0 people. But if you have one student who's not in your rental, you still have an 85% occupancy if you have a 6-bed house. So there's all these rental income supports that are really great for student rentals. And even though students are more likely than not to pay you every month, we still have rental guarantors. So parents sort of double sign the lease. And I think that's a safety mechanism that doesn't exist in any other niche there is. So you have not only 1, but 2 people who you can phone if the rent isn't paid. And so that's something that really helps me sleep at night, knowing that mom and dad are going to step in if needed. But I want to say, as an Ontario student rental investor, the thing that I like, the biggest pro for me is that students are transient. They come, they go, they're in your house for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then they rotate out, and then you are always resetting your rents to market rents. You don't have to worry about professional tenants moving in and never moving out and trying to catch up with market rents. They're always coming, always going. And so from just a payment security mechanism, student rentals are oddly, like, I would say, one of the most secure rental investments out there. The
Awesome.
con,
Oh, sorry,
cons,
keep going.
the cons, they're kids, they're gross. Like, they don't know anything about anything. Stuff can get disgusting. Many of them have never lived out of the house. They don't truly understand what a lease document is. Like my own son, I'm embarrassed to say, like, DocuSigned his lease. I don't think he read a single word. Like, they do not understand the obligation that they get themselves in, what their rights, what their obligations are. So there's a lot of, not for me, but for my property managers, there's a lot of hand holding. You really do need to take them through what is required. So I'd say there's a bit of heavy lifting in that department, but it's more psychological. Like, you're kind of the parent, even though you're landlord. So there's that. And yeah, so teenagers, and young adults, I would say, obviously the con is what we're all thinking, is that there are parties, they're gross, there's damage. But I like to say that the good cash flow that you get from your student rentals, that's what you're using to apply towards your maintenance fees. But if you're on them properly and you help them understand their lease, then that's all pretty minimized anyway. So that's pretty much
I
it.
think all of us, we're thinking the same thing. I'm picturing my kids' rooms right now, and I just can't imagine, right?
Right. No, I mean, I do have a cleaning clause in my lease. So we'll talk about that. Like, little ways I mitigate. I've been given pretty much every curveball under the sun, and I feel like my lease is a living, breathing document, because every time I think I've solved the problem, they come up with another problem for me to solve. But I will bring those all to the summit so that you can benefit
So the
from
Q&A is just lighting up with questions on student rentals. We're going to get to as many as we can at the end, but let's swing over to Mike Ponte now. Joint ventures, the good, the ugly. We'll skip the bad.
The good, the good, the ugly. Well, there's kind of a lot of ugly right now, but at the same time, there's also a lot of good, believe it or not. And part of the good is there is actually a crap load of money out there. I mean, a lot. Okay. And for those that are in this, have raised money, I think they can see that. It's just, there is, and I think the key word that I want to highlight is quality money. Okay. And there is a difference. Is people that are very well established, they are looking for places to park it because they look at the stock markets, things are a little bit scary, there's a concern of recession, but in the same breath, depending on the markets, some markets are doing exceptionally well. They're just like, well, how do I get part of this as well, right? So for quality money, and those are actually some of your best partners to be very, very honest, because you can rinse and repeat that. They can actually be an investor for multiple deals. So from that perspective, there's a lot of that cash that's just sitting out there ready to be tapped on. And so that's part of one of the things we're going to be discussing at the summit is, where do you find these people? Are they under a rock? Are they under a bridge? Where do you find these? And so we're going to talk a little bit about where to find and what is determined as quality money, right? Now there are a lot of cons because there are individuals that are, I hate to say this, but if they've got $100,000, that's the cash that they have. And now everything's been tightened up a little bit. There's a lot of concern in the marketplace. I'm sure everybody's noticing food costs. Gillian was talking about kids. I don't know if anybody's done any grocery shopping, but my God, like my one son, it's insanity. And Gillian, I can totally attest about being gross because it's disgusting in his room, gross. But to go back to it, with that being said, a lot of people are being tighter with their money, being much more cautious. And the real important one, even though quality money's there and there's a lot of it, where a lot of people used to use resources, which is home equity lines of credit, HELOCs. I'm sure for those that have got HELOCs, show of hands, myself, I've got a HELOC. I've noticed that the bill's up a little bit higher than what it was a year ago. And so that money's no longer becoming really so much available because the costs to fund that, the deal really has got to make much more fundamental sense to do the investment, number one, and to cover that HELOC cost. So even though we've seen quality money available and more available, it's kind of the average everyday investor that's got home equity lines of credit. They're being much more cautious. And for a lot of deals, it's just maybe not making as much sense as it used to be. So it's kind of that managing side of things. So there are pros and cons to the raising capital side. It's just like anything, guys. This business, for those that have been in this for a long time, very cyclical. How do we manage through it? And that's, what I'm very looking forward to the summit, because we're all going to be sharing our experiences in regards to, hey, just rolling with the punches. And that's the key. I'm done.
Thanks for that, Mike. And I got to say, with cash flow, going back to that poll question, although 79% of people say they're struggling with cash flow, there's still 21% that say that they're not. So I need to get those people in joint venture with them, because it's absolutely cyclical and it depends on the type of investment you're in. I mean, I bought some of my best deals in the crappiest markets and vice versa, so it really depends. Okay. Now on to not rent to own, short-term rentals. So we'll go with Noelle first and then Victoria.
Okay, so first of all, I personally think that short-term rentals are fun. People are typically happy. People are typically coming because they're getting away from something, or you're able to accommodate someone who really wants a home away from home, like a travel nurse or a resident doctor. And so it's really fun, I feel, to be able to accommodate people in their travels. The cash flow is very lucrative. You get paid out pretty quickly, per weekend. Once you host someone on the weekend, as soon as they check out, you're getting that money transferred into your account. So it's a quick, easy cash flow. I love that it's attractive to a broad audience. So you're not really niched down into one particular audience. You can house people of all ages. And because of that, you can be kind of choosy with who you're having in your short-term rental. So that's another pro for me. I also find that there's less wear and tear. And I think that is a myth that I'm going to bust at the summit. A lot of people think that short-term rentals take a big hit, take a lot of wear and tear. but you have a cleaner in there every 2-3 days. Maybe at max you have a cleaner in there once a week. So you're able to see what's going on. If there's a nick here or a broken leg on a chair there, you know that right away. You know if that door handle's being finicky right away because your cleaner or part of your team, your property manager, is reporting that back to you as it happens. And so those are kind of the pros that came to mind when I saw that question. And the cons of this is, as I'm sure a lot of you have heard, is the legislation that's coming down the pipes on short-term rentals. A lot of towns, Ottawa, Halifax now, starting September 1st, you can no longer have a short-term rental in Halifax. But what I'd really like to talk about at the summit is how we can diversify under the short-term rental umbrella. There are ways around this, and it's not just a short-term rental means an Airbnb. And I think that very often we've mixed those two, we've crossed that up, but short-term rentals, we can really diversify under the short-term rental umbrella, and I'm excited to talk more about that. So legislation can be a con for some people and actually scare people away with what's been coming down the pipes. Another thing kind of on that same vein is that it's very review focused, right? So whereas a long-term tenant's not necessarily leaving you a review for the public to see, I think that a con of short-term rentals can actually be that people can really paint a bad picture of you, even if you didn't, commit the crime, so to speak. And so if they were unhappy with something or having a bad day, their review can actually paint a bad picture of your place. And I think that the review system can actually be a con. It can be a pro as well, but it can actually be a con depending on who's leaving the review. Airbnb yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, and they're a punching bag for municipalities. As you see in Vancouver, they just raised the licensing fee by 800%, right? So I hate to cut you off, Noelle, but in the spirit of time, we have to keep rolling here. So Victoria, can you tell us a little bit about maybe the hotel and how some changes to short-term rentals really benefited your investment there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was ticking off things because Noelle and I had a lot of the similar ones, which fun was the number one. And with the motel, so for us, it's about flexibility and control, because when talking about the legislation changes, the bylaw changes, you put a lot of faith in the municipalities when you do short-term rentals. And so with the motel, this is commercial. And when they go and they change those bylaws, it doesn't impact the motel. It actually enhances it because now there's less availability for people to stay. And so they're flocking to us. Yet we can still operate it like a short-term rental. So just again, the control is the biggest thing for me. That was a big reason for the pivot, because I really was seeing that lack of control happening. No matter how savvy you might have been, the fact that these are guests and not tenants is huge. And so it's on a completely different agreement. And if they stay past their welcome, then it's not a matter of the tenancy board. It's a sheriff. You call the sheriff and they get removed.
Yeah, you don't have to wait 9 months for a hearing like you would to try to evict a tenant in British Columbia or Ontario, for example.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll roll on to question number 2 now. So we'll go back to Rachel again. She's patiently waiting in the car. So what should investors look for in properties to maximize cash flow? So not necessarily specific to your rent-to-own strategy, but what should investors look for in properties to maximize cash flow? What will be your number one piece of advice right now?
Well, Cory, I can only speak to my strategy. I have my rent to own hat on. I still want to comment in that realm. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when it comes to rent to owns, I think it's a very distinct strategy where we really see success in focusing on the people, not the property. It's probably one of the only investing strategies where the people come first and we cater to them, and then we find a property that makes sense for their budget, for their lifestyle. And really with rent to owns, if you want to maximize cash flow, you need to look for people who don't have too high of an initial down payment, but also don't have too low. And that's a really important consideration, because if they are if their initial down payment is $40,000, $50,000 and they only need $60,000 or $70,000 to be able to exit the rent to own strategy, that means their monthly payment is not going to require them to put down as high of a forced savings component. And a lot of people, investors, think, oh my God, I want the $50,000, $60,000 initial down payment. But what that really means is that if you're using a HELOC to come up with your 20% to get that property in the first place, well, you might not cash flow enough to offset your carrying costs for the mortgage and for the HELOC interest. So in today's economy, a lot of investors are defaulting to using their HELOC. Rent owns are very HELOC friendly. Like Mike was saying, HELOCs are the way to go. And really, it's infinite returns. It's not just about cash flow. But if you want to have the cash flow to offset your HELOC expenses, you got to go for tenant buyers that have about 4.5%, maximum 5% down of the purchase price.
Okay, fantastic answer, Rachel. So thank you for that. You've given me a lot of food for thought on rent to own, which is something that is really, really starting to take off in expensive markets, especially like Kelowna. So let's just swing back to Victoria then. Same question to you. What should investors look for in properties to maximize your cash flow?
First, I'd start with location and what's the surrounding area? What's the potential? What's the growth happening? So that you can start to anticipate what could be potential coming up. And then I'd also be looking at lot size and zoning to think about, okay, I just did this with a single family home that I purchased, but the goal is actually going to be to develop that into a 12 unit based on the lot size and the area, and it all conforms to the zoning. And then the final one I would say is value add opportunities. Have another property right now that I'm looking at converting the garage, thinking about either storage. We've got space and the zoning allows for this as well. And so it's just ways to continue to maximize what you currently have and what are the potentials there.
Yeah, change of use and multiple exit strategies. Love it. Gillian, over to you. What should investors look for in properties to maximize cash flow today?
I think it's almost the same as Victoria's, but just with this student rental lens. I mean, obviously, if you want to have a great student rental, you need a property that is proximate to like a college or a university. Some jurisdictions, some zoning, not zoning, but some schools, the students want to be literally on the same street. Others can handle being a short bus ride away. So you need to kind of do your own homework and understand where students, where they want to live, so you understand exactly where to buy, because there's usually like student pockets that are more appealing than others. So obviously location matters, but when I look at student rental properties, I'm always looking for ways to, again, like maximize the space for students. And I'm not in the business of cramming everyone in like a can of sardines, but really student rentals are different. It's how many rooms can you comfortably fit in this space that is safe and legal and comfortable for these students. So sometimes I've taken living rooms and I've turned them into a bedroom, and that's okay in the student rental world. So that would give you maybe like an extra $700 a month in rental income. So really, you just have to sort of be creative, look at the space and see how many people you can comfortably fit. So that's what I would
And
do.
there's such a demand for it
Location.
right now. I mean, they're building them like crazy in Kelowna here, but not nearly fast enough. So I think more and more people should get into student rentals, and I think they just don't know about them.
Well, and I think too, and we can again talk about this at the summit, but people think of student rentals or any of the investment strategies we're talking about, and they think about it as a home you have to go out and buy. But the student rental strategy, I mean, you can literally rent a room in your primary home to an international student for $1,200 a month in Toronto, or $1,500. So if cash flow is a problem for your family pocketbook right this minute, you can have someone in your house if that's something you want. It doesn't have to be scary. You meet someone interesting for 8 months and they stay in your house, and you can make like a really great additional income. So there's all sorts of different things.
Awesome. Thanks, Gillian. So over to you, Noelle. What should investors look for in properties to maximize cash flow?
So I think Victoria and I hang out a little bit too much because I had everything that she said down, but I was given a bit more time. So I've also come up with another one, which is a hat that I've worn both at the motel and in a lot of our co-hosting properties, which is design. Like, you have to have a short-term rental that stands out on the market. And you have to do, I'm sure that you guys follow some of these people, but like, put an accent wall in there. make somebody come to, give them the experience that they're looking for. They want to post their vacation on Instagram. They want to feel somewhere. They want to feel like they've stayed somewhere that's unlike their home. So I always tell, my students to go onto their area, go onto Airbnb or AirDNA and look around, and how can you stand out from kind of the run-of-the-mill short-term rental in your area. And that's what we did at the motel actually as well.
Awesome. And Mikey, bring it home. I know cash is king for you. You love to talk about this stuff. What should investors look for in properties right now to maximize cash flow?
Everybody said pretty much all my answers, so I'm just going to say ditto. No, I'm joking. I've got a few other things I can add, but honestly, everybody kind of did touch on a lot of this stuff. And I think the first part, I think Victoria and Noelle, I think everybody said this, was finding a better quality tenant. Like, and I am talking long-term tenants, so don't be afraid to put a little bit of lipstick and rouge and improve it. The rents will go up, but here's something that maybe hasn't been shared. Rental demand is through the roof, like we've not seen in decades. I've never seen it to this level. And the one bit of advice I'm going to give everybody is know your market. Like, really pay attention, not what happened last month. What you want to know, what happened yesterday. Okay. Rents are changing so quickly throughout every single market right now. Even property managers have lost control in regards to understanding what the rents were. I had a property manager say, we should rent it for this. And I actually got an extra $150 to $175 more because that's what the market demand is. So just paying attention and watching what's going on in the market, because things have evolved so quickly. Okay. Other things that you can take advantage of too as well. I'm in the multifamily space, just for most people that may or may not be aware. But because of the rental demand, if you have apartment buildings that used to include utilities, stop, transfer those utilities. In fact, put a fixed charge to heat and water if you have to, okay, on top of the electricity, storage, pet fees. There's all these different things that you can actually do. But the biggest one that I can highlight for long-term rentals is watch the market. It is changing every single day. And don't just base it off what your property manager is telling you. Do your own assessment and due diligence before you start renting that market. So renting your property.
Well said. I mean, I do, like, our property manager surveys once a month. Now they're doing it every 2 weeks, because in Alberta, you can only raise rents once a year.
Right.
Now, like what you just said, right? If you wait a month, you can rent it $100 higher than you could have rented it the month before. So you cap it out on 20 or 30 or 50 units, by waiting another month and waiting another month for your rent increases. Some excellent points in there, Michael. I want to thank you for sharing that. So Rachel does have to leave us here shortly. So she's going to be able to tackle one more question. So we'll go to her again. How are you planning for the future, and what are your predictions for the next 24 months, next 2 years?
Well, I think that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that we're just not going to be able to keep up with new construction to satisfy the volume of demand for rental housing or for owned housing. So I think that, future-proofing your business as a real estate investor, first of all, you have to consider going beyond your backyard. If we were all kind of thinking, okay, let's just invest as close to home as we possibly can, I think we have to go beyond that. There's a huge ripple effect, and affordability, as far as rent to own even goes, is further out than it ever was before. And my prediction in the next 2 years is that entry-level homes are still going to be strained in terms of inventory. We're still not going to satisfy the supply of the volume of people who are going to want to own. And if they cannot find rentals that are affordable, as Mike said, the cost of rentals is going to continue to go up because supply and demand is in play here. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, well, rent is really comparable now to what a mortgage would look like. So it's going to definitely push a lot of entry-level buyers to the rent-to-own strategy. So I see a lot more demand for rent-to-own opportunities. So if investors own properties that in the past they haven't been able to maybe rent-to-own, they will probably see a different appetite from home buyers going forward.
Yeah, and like creative stuff, getting away from the bank, doing agreements for sale. I mean, this is the way deals happened 100 years ago. We've almost run full circle to there. The bank is, making themselves less relevant as we go forward here. But that was a great answer. Thanks, Rachel. I love what you do. I'm a huge fan. And thank you again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And wish your father a happy birthday.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing everybody at the Real Estate Resilience Summit. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Bye, Rachel. See you soon.
Yeah, just a sneak peek of what's to come, folks. It's amazing what we've done so far, just even on this call. So let's go to Michael now, again, on this same question. 24-month predictions, and how are you planning for the future opportunities in your portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. My crystal ball, I don't know about anybody else, is a little foggy, right? It's always kind of interesting because it's always kind of changing in the world. But you know what? I am treating this as if it was almost 2008, 2009. For those that have been in that market, they can appreciate that. But that's not necessarily a negative thing, just to be very clear, okay? I actually look at this as an opportunity. I don't mind hearing a lot of the negative news, and this is going to sound really, really bad. But truthfully, as I'm an investor, and I am looking for opportunities, and that's the way I am treating it. And so with that being said, unfortunately, my 2 cents is this. I think the next 6 months is going to be challenging for a lot of people. I think it's going to get really, really challenging. There's inklings of a potential another rate increase. I'm sorry, guys, in October, and they are just rumors at this stage, but that's what I'm hearing. And that's just going to add more pressure to the marketplace. So for myself, I'm getting into cash. As I'm sharing with you guys about raising capital, I'm raising as much money as I possibly can because I do see opportunities, and I don't have to wait a year or 2 years from now to make that happen. There's opportunities today, but I do believe there'll be a lot more opportunities in the near future. Most of our acquisitions, most of our success happened in 2008, 2009. We were buying at some amazing prices and it paid huge dividends. I just avoided all the noise. People were telling me, you're crazy, you're stupid, yada, 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 yada. And I remember that, but truthfully, I look at this as yet another opportunity for people. But again, you just have to kind of block out some of the noise and just truly look for opportunities. And so again, to go back, I think there's turbulence. I think there's challenges going to be happening in the next 6 to 8 months. But that's not to say there are no opportunities. I'm a big believer that they are coming. So
I think Michael, you and I are around the same vintage. I think we started investing around the same time, around 2000, like almost 25 years now. So, I mean, we've seen these cycles come and go, especially in Alberta. I mean, people in Ontario, this is the first down cycle they've seen in many cases, or in British Columbia. So they haven't really seen this yet. But there's definitely opportunities. So Noelle, what do you think? What's the next 24 months, and how are you planning for future opportunities?
So personally, how I'm planning for future opportunities is the motel is my first commercial investment, and I'm very attracted to that right now. It feels like it has a bit more of a safety net there for me in terms of, just while they figure out all this legislation. And so I'm geared towards more commercial investments right now than residential. As far as, my husband and I have also been talking about, land is still fairly cheap in Nova Scotia. I'll share that with you guys here. And I don't think it always will be. There's a housing crisis here. And so we've also been talking about perhaps just grabbing up some of that land while we can, and maybe just sitting on it for a little bit. So it's not a cash flowing opportunity, but I think that a short-term buy and hold scenario would be good in the next couple of years in the East Coast anyway. So those are my kind of predictions and where I'm headed in the next 24 months.
Awesome. Great stuff, Noelle. So Gillian, how about you? What do you think? Next 24 months, and how are you planning for future opportunities?
So like Michael, I think the next 24 months are going to be bumpy as a mortgage agent as well. I mean, yeah, some of the files I'm seeing, a lot of the people, like a lot of clients who cannot refinance, who are getting renewals. We're just hearing in the industry a lot about difficulties coming down the pipe. But I will say this, I think in times like this, one of the things, what I tell people to do and not to do is stop reading the news. I think people get really frightened and terrified by what they read. Now it's more important than ever to remember that there are always deals to be had, and you need to take sort of the fear out of the equation. And just use your rational thinking brain, because this is the only time when like half the field is gone. Like people are scared to death, so all your competition is gone. So this is the good time to be putting your hat in the ring, and so that's what I intend to do. So even though I have like a sort of sense of what I think is coming down the pipe economically, I'm like, Michael, I'm trying to raise cash. I'm trying to get prepared for the deals. I bought my first property in 2008 in Toronto just as the stock market market like went kapooey. And honestly, that was, people told us we were absolutely nuts, just like you. And I just feel grateful for throwing my hat in the ring when everyone else was afraid, because I think those are the opportunities that often present themselves as being the smartest ones ever. So, I mean, obviously you have to apply rigor and you have to know your numbers, and but there's just not enough housing for people in Canada in any niche. So we got to figure it out. And the deals are there waiting for us. So
Yeah, and then the
someone,
investors are the ones who are supplying the housing. It's not the government, as much as they like to say they are,
yeah,
right? And it's
yeah.
dominating the news cycles nowadays, and the news is exactly what it is.
So I
But
would
I
say,
agree with so many things
yeah.
what you've said. Yep, sorry,
Yeah,
please
and if you're
continue.
really afraid, then partner with someone who's less afraid than you. Like, that's the
Yeah,
idea. Like, talk to Michael, get a partner, someone who's doing it. Like, who are the JVs out there who are not afraid to march forth in these crazy times, and, you know, attach your cart to that horse, because now is really the time to be kind of looking for stuff. That's what I think.
at the same time, do your homework on your JV partner, not Mike No Fear
Of
Ponte.
course,
He's got a solid track record,
Michael
but
help
be
us.
careful who you syndicate with. Hey,
Yeah.
Victoria, you're batting cleanup on this one. What do you think? Next 24 months, how's your crystal ball?
Mike said, it's put your investor hat on and you kind of push through that fear. You keep the optimism and you think about what history has shown us and the historical market increases that we've had and the cyclical the market has done. And so for me, it's all about, again, maximizing what I have, stabilizing what I currently have before I start to increase more. I'm looking at my portfolio. I just sold one of my single family homes that I've been just hanging on to for a long time, but it's going to be up for renewal next year. So for me, it was a good time to sell. I have another one that I'm going to be doing rent to own with, and then also getting into development opportunities now, because it is back to that control, back to the ability. We look at what does the country need? What does the province and where you're located need? And it is housing, and development and apartments is going to be the way forward. So for me, it's just about taking the opportunity, because anytime that there's a challenge, there is opportunity. We also did an agreement for sale last week when we closed on one of ours. And so, yeah, negotiating, we can negotiate a lot more these days. So I'm actually really enjoying it and staying cautiously optimistic.
Awesome. Great stuff. And keep the questions coming in the Q&A. We just have such a fantastic interaction from our audience today. I want to thank everybody for their questions. This is one of the best webinars I've been on. And again, just a sneak peek of what's to come at Real Estate Resilience 2023. So we're down to like 6 or 7 minutes left. So we have one last question. This one is more to do with habits. It's worded, what do people need to stop doing and what do they need to start doing? So it's more like good habits and bad habits. So Victoria, why don't you start us out on this one? What do you think people need to stop doing and what do people need to start doing?
First off, cutting corners. So I think that people need to make sure that they not cut corners, especially when you're acting as a landlord, making sure that you are following the rules, because people are getting taken to court these days. And so you want to be able to say, hand on heart, I did the best that I could to the best of my ability, and follow the rules, because you just don't have a leg to stand on as much as possible. Also, over leveraging, we have to be very careful about over leveraging and making sure that you're not cutting it too close to the wire. We don't know if these rates go up a little bit more, is that's going to tip it over for you. And then neglecting the due diligence. We have the opportunity to be able to do due diligence. And so do a thorough due diligence. Don't let your emotion take over, because you really, really want this property. No matter how good the deal looks or appears, there's going to be another one around the corner. So I would just
Never fall in love with a property.
never. And like, we have a great story with the motel, and I'm sure we'll tell it at the summit about that, how it worked out in our favor. But yeah, for me, it's just all about staying above board and then looking at the long game, not the short game. We're here for the long term.
Yeah, and I love even what Mike said about, looking at 5-year JV partners, you're looking at 20 plus years, So Noelle, do you want to expand on that? Good habits versus bad habits going forward.
Sure. I kind of jotted down, stop niching too tightly. Like, I think a lot of people talk about niching down. I'm French. Some people say niching. I say niching. So don't niche too tightly. But because I think diversification in tumultuous times is actually very important. I've experienced that in my own business, where, you know, something was just like really not working out during the pandemic. But as I explained before, Airbnb management business completely took off, and that was because I had diversified my business. And so, you know your umbrella and play underneath it is what I kind of like to say. Like, for instance, if you're into short-term rentals, let that be your umbrella. But underneath of that, you could do arbitrage, you could own an STR, you can co-host other people's STRs, which is way less risky for you. You could go commercial like Victoria and I have done. And so there's a lot of different ways to diversify underneath the umbrella that you're kind of most attracted to or most skilled at. But I would say diversification is probably key.
Awesome. Over to you, Mike. I mean, you're also a professional coach. You teach a lot of students. I mean, what are you saying these days? Good habits, bad habits?
Yeah, I think, been doing this a long time. Just because you've been investing in your market and it's worked for the last 15 years doesn't mean it's the right market anymore. It happens. It's just part of the game, right? So I think the biggest thing for a lot of people, and I can speak to this because I am in Vancouver, and for our friends in Toronto, I think you guys can appreciate this too, but we tend to get so stuck that we have to invest in our backyard. I don't know why, but it's just what it is. It's just, we have to touch it, see it. I need to drive past it. But honestly, go where it makes the most fundamental sense. Do your own due diligence, do your research. Noelle highlighted this as well. Maybe the strategy that you've been investing in isn't working anymore. Maybe you need to be more open-minded about maybe a different strategy in its entirety. So I think for a lot of people, it's just, take the time to do your own research. Take the time to look at maybe a different market. Take the time to educate yourself, maybe in a completely different strategy in itself altogether, right? And I think that will help. And avoid a lot of the whole media stuff. You hear all this negativity that's there. There's opportunities. Don't fool yourself. There's lots of it. It's just maybe not in your own backyard. You just need to maybe look at something a little bit different. So
keep open-minded. I love it. Keep learning, and keep looking for other opportunities. Love it. So Gillian, you're gonna clean up on the last question. What do you think? Good habits,
Oh,
bad
again,
habits?
I'm in such an esteemed group. It's hard to, come up with anything that is totally original with smart people going ahead of you. But so I just want to echo what everyone else has said, which is one, again, like, stop reading the news. You don't want to be in a totally negative mindset. So get off Twitter. No, literally, you want to put good stuff into your brain so that you face you face your task every day with optimism and positivity. And I say that about all things. If you read stuff and it depresses you and it fills you with anxiety, then that's not a helpful way to start the day. So we're investors. We're here in the game to look for opportunity, to feel like there's areas for growth. So we need to align ourselves with people who are successfully doing that. Seek them out if you aren't already. Turn out the negativity. Find the positivity in places exactly like this, where you're watching, seasoned veterans, pivot and try to find solutions to stuff. So everyone's facing the same stuff. So one, be positive, and two, again, it's just echoing that diversity is important, whether it's, finding a new kind of little segment of your niche, or whether it's diversifying, regionally. So I myself just was like, I cannot stay in Ontario anymore. It's too expensive. I'm investing out east. Houses feel like they're free out there. They're so much cheaper compared to Ontario. The numbers are making really great sense for me. So, again, I'm busting out of my own comfort zone, but I'm going to where the opportunities are but that's only because I have an open mind. I want to keep learning. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So much good stuff. I want to thank everybody on the panel. We do have a ton of questions in the Q&A. And I'm going to talk briefly about the summit, and then we're going to go back to the Q&A. So please don't disappear. The best is yet to come. Elizabeth just popped back on again. I wonder, do you have anything to say on the final question there? Good habits, bad habits. Any pieces of advice you want to add?
I love what the speakers have to say, and there's such different perspectives. Like, it's really interesting to hear what people have to say. I think if I had to say what my advice would be, it's that one of the best things about real estate is that everybody's journey is unique. So Don't try and make your journey look like somebody that you've seen on social media. Don't try to fit into a box. Don't try to replicate what other people are doing. The people who have made the most money in real estate typically have known who they are, have known what their goals are. They've taken the time and invested the money to educate themselves, and then they've done their own thing. Don't be afraid to do that, because that's how we got, where we are in terms of so many different strategies, because people were willing to take a risk. So understand your fundamentals and structure deals based on what it is you're looking to achieve and what the needs are in the market where you're active.
Yeah, and education is key. Everyone should keep investing in themselves, and education is key. So this is our final poll question: is how much money have you invested in your real estate education? So I really want to see the answers to this one. So this is going to be a cool one. So I'll just let that one percolate in the background. And I think it's launched. So I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen, talk about the summit, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, my favorite part of the show.
I hope
So
it's
here we
okay. I was
go.
sort of typing a bit as we were going.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good. Okay, Elizabeth, is the slide up? Looks like it's okay.
Slides okay. I just want to take a second. Jillian, I think you've been answering questions in the background. You're a rock star.
I didn't know
Oh,
if I was
wow.
supposed to be
Okay.
doing that or not. I was listening and typing at the same time.
Well, there's more questions than can be answered, so thank you. We're definitely going to hit the target on there. Love it when people spring into action like that. Okay, so as that last poll is percolating away, I'm happy and thrilled to be talking about the summit. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed the webinar. Now, keep in mind, this was just a sneak preview of what's to come. So this is October 14th and 15th. Pricing is going up in probably a little less than a week. And you do get to keep these recordings forever. So if you can't make it to all the sessions, I'm still watching the sessions from 2022. So it's really quite a thing. We always have a lot of inquiries. Hey, how come I didn't get the early bird pricing? Well, now is your opportunity. It's only 74 bucks. Maybe I'll get Elizabeth to pop that link again in the chat. And our contest is still on. The first 20 tickets are going to go in for this draw for the prize. So on that, I'm just going to chat a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. So it's broken up into 2 days. So the first day is going to be all about opportunities in a challenging market. And we've touched on a lot of that here tonight. Kristen Spilfogel and I are going to talk about recession proofing. I unfortunately had to recession proof after going through an Alberta recession that almost took me out due to the oil crash. And I think Mike knows what I'm talking about on that one. 2016 to 19 were some pretty ugly years. And densification, James Canal, he's an expert on that. So that's something that's increasingly more popular. So we've got a sneak peek of income here from Victoria and Noelle about increasing your income, part 1. I can't wait to hear the rest of this. I mean, that was only just a few, it's a sneak peek of what's to come, as well as in Gillian and Rachel too in part 2. So it's going to be all about income on the first day. Rounding it off with Dahlia is going to be talking about financing. So Dahlia is a returning speaker from last year. She did a really good segment on finance, where the state of the market is and where things are going. So really excited for day 1. And then the second day is going to be all about shifting into growth mode. So Elizabeth and Megan are going to be talking about repositioning underperforming assets. So this is when we go to the change of use. This is something that is becoming more and more common as people are getting creative. And, in Elizabeth's case, she's turned around property with some absolutely miraculous results. So you're going to want to tune in just to hear this story. It's amazing. Mike, again, I really look forward to your raising capital. I also raise capital. I'm also raising a ton of capital, just like Mike is. I'm trying to buy tons of multifamily. We're in competitive markets right now, but we both see the same vision. We see the trajectory, and we've just been stomped for the last decade in Alberta, so it's time for some revenge. That's kind of how I feel. Bad choice of words there, but payback is better. And, and on being on the right side of the law, securities is very important. We're seeing a ton of this soliciting on Facebook and all kinds of things that are basically illegal as far as raising capitals go. So we want to make sure we're giving the attendees, you want to be on the right side of this. So we're going to have a couple securities lawyers. Actually, Brandon is actually doing an LP for me right now. I'm in the process of raising several $1 million in a limited partnership. He's actually doing my LP. So I'm going to be happy to talk about that as well. Tony, he's talking all about social media. This is an area that I'm absolutely terrible at. But as real estate owners and business people, it's a necessity. So Tony's going to show us some really good tips, which platforms are most effective and how we can get the best use out of that. And finally, rounding it out, crafting a life you love with Gary and Adriana. This is sort of after Andrew's session last year. We're going to end on a really high motivational note. And this is what it's really about as real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Victoria mentioned it several times in this call, the control. you know, and that's what we like. We like to control our own destiny. We don't want to be, you know, have our futures defined by someone else. We want to do what we love and, you know, help as many people as we can in the process. So this is why I'm absolutely thrilled to put this summit on again. We've already pretty much matched our tickets for last year, so it's going to be a tremendous event. You know, help spread the word with your friends. But the best part about this is the connections you make. You know, Rich Canfield talked about this last year. He said there was two African guys that were from the same village. They met on an online summit and became best friends and JV partners and went on to buy tons of properties. And they met virtually on one of these summits. So it's just absolutely amazing what can happen. These connections are gold. And you get to engage directly with us, the speakers. You know, you've done a little bit of it on here today, but the Excel Events platform is a lot more engaging. There's a lot more polls, there's a lot more Q&A, there's a lot more interaction, especially in the speakers' booths. So they have a virtual booth staging area as well. So there's networking, tons of networking features. We have lounges set up that are specifically for networking. We have a speed dating feature that allows you to match one-on-one randomly with other attendees for a minute at a time, and you can just, you know, meet people, you know, participate on that if you want. This is the best part of this for me. So when you set up your profile, it kind of looks like this. It's kind of a LinkedIn style interface. So you can make your profile as public or as private as you want. Now you can direct message other attendees. You can go one-on-one with video. You can filter by common interests. So if you want to do Airbnb arbitrage, you just search for that and you'll find everybody who's into that. So this is a great way to make contact all in one place. So, you know, this was Rob's profile from last year. You know, you can have all your social media links on there, a bio. You can even put a video in your attendee profile. So there's a ton of great features that you have as the attendee. So in the sessions, it kind of looks like this. You know, we roll with a presentation. Everyone is going to be doing a sort of a similar slideshow presentation. And, you know, on the right-hand side, we have the polls, Q&A, and chat, sort of similar to a Zoom call, only there's a lot more features. You know, this is a really great interactive sessions, and they're just going to be going concurrently with some networking breaks. But it's a pretty action-packed weekend. And once you get used to the interface, you're going to love it. But we have a ton of bonuses in here too. So the engagement prizes this year are really good. I think Mike's even given away one of his education packages. I think Victoria's as well, and Christian. I mean, these education packages, folks, are worth thousands. You can't even really put a price on them, you know, so those are included. This is in the gamification. You're going to compete to win these. I think it's going to be the top 6 or 7 are going to be able to win these prizes, maybe even the top 10. But we have Airbnb getaways, and we have a ton of prizes we haven't even announced. So this is great reason to join the live portion, even if you can make a portion of it. So how this looks is people went head to head. You can see on the right-hand side, Victoria and Tammy were slugging it out right to the bitter end, but Jay got the most prizes and he won tickets to, I think it was multifamily conference. So you can actually see who's in the lead as you go. So it's super cool. There's a live feed and leaderboard, as well as, you know, sponsors tab with sponsors. So each speaker has been gracious enough to also donate a gift for this. Now they're going to have that in their virtual booth. This is typically something that you can't find on their website. So a lot of them are ebooks, checklists, coaching calls. There's just so much free stuff here that's in the booths. The interface looks kind of like this. You know, everyone has a card. You can actually see if the speaker is in their booth. So if they're logged into the summit, they're there. You can direct message them. You can do Q&A. You can launch polls in there. You know, you can do anything you want and engage with the speaker directly, you know, if they're attending as an attendee. So I found this was a really cool feature. I spent most of my time in here just engaging people when I wasn't speaking. So fantastic ability. And here's a look at what one of the booths looks like. Elizabeth has done just an absolutely fantastic job. So you can see there's a bio. She's got a ton of free stuff she's giving out. I'm not going to show you the link because you can actually see it. So that's kind of hidden there. You know, she's got a bunch of free stuff. She's got products as well as a call to action. You can just book a free call right with the link there. So everyone's going to have a pretty engaging booth like this. This is actually my favorite part of the summit. And finally, the action plan. So it is a lot to take in. It's 2 full days of craziness. But if you can't absorb it all, we've actually put together a really comprehensive action plan. And all the tips are summarized in one place. And, you know, this has a $500 value, but it's really invaluable because I picked up so many tips from this last year. One refinance tip saved me $100 grand this year on a refinance, just from one thing I learned from Quentin last year. just from one example. So just imagine if you multiply this by 16 speakers, and this is kind of how it looks. This is one page of the, basically it's a 40-page encyclopedia of the action plan once the summit is over, with a bunch of links to relevant, free downloads, etc. All this for just 74 bucks. Like I said, we're keeping this price very competitive because we want everybody to join. We want to surpass what we did last year. We want to help spread the word. So if you like the webinar tonight, this is again just a sneak peek of what's to come. This is going to be an entire weekend of immersing ourselves in this. And I asked in the chat, what do you most want to look forward to? The summit is really built around you, the attendee. So your feedback is what we use to make these events. So if you want, type in the chat. If there's anything that we missed, anything that you want covered, we're going to be sure to cover it. So just to quickly summarize before we start the Q&A. So we're going to have the 16 presentations from the 16 speakers. This absolutely state-of-the-art platform. Free bonus number 1 is the engagement prizes, 10,000 plus. The 16 free gifts, that's bonus number 2, and bonus number 3 is the action plan. So all this for 75 bucks. It's pretty hard to beat. The recordings you get to keep forever. So even if you can't make it on the weekend or only part of the weekend, but of course we want to see you. But these tickets are going up. So I advise if you were able to hit the link and buy during the call, you're also entered in for the prize. But if not, make sure you get in before September 30th. We don't want you guys to miss out. Unfortunately, this is already populated now and we can't change it. But, we're 3 weeks away from the summit. So, I'm really excited. So with that, on to the Q&A. I'm just going to stop the share now. And Elizabeth, I don't know, do you want to moderate that or do you want me to? I'm not sure because maybe Gillian's answered them all.
There is a whole bunch for Noelle as well.
All right.
And then there was a couple for Michael. So I'm happy to moderate if you want to catch your breath and grab a glass of water, or if you want to keep going, I won't get in your way.
Yeah, if you can take over for 5 minutes, I'll just disappear and come right back. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. All right, guys. Let's see here. So Noelle, I've started doing short-term rental for a bachelor in Lower Mainland. What software do you typically use other than AirDNA for your short-term rentals?
So I've lived in the Lower Mainland. I'm not from there. When I first started our short-term rental business, I did get on AirDNA for a little while, but then I just started researching on my own in the area. So that would be look at your local like Facebook marketplace, I would just collect real raw data from your area. So use Airbnb, look at the map in your surrounding areas, then go zoom out a little further, see what people are paying on the outskirts. I think you'll have a really good sense. And then you can also go and see how booked their calendars are, right? So you can see if they've priced themselves out. But I think what you'll notice there is that, a lot of them, I'll give you a rule of thumb that I use here in Nova Scotia. I usually do $150 per bedroom per night, which would be a double occupancy bed. So if there's a hot tub, then I'd add $100 per night, if that makes sense.
That made sense.
I think that's probably kind of what you'll see.
Sorry, Noelle, I was just going to say you cut out there when you're giving the most critical information.
You got to join the summit now.
Yeah.
Is that general equation, but then if you want to,
Okay. I think we'll give Noelle, it looks like maybe her internet's cut out, and then when she comes back, maybe she can finish typing her answer. Gillian, I think, had provided a partial answer for a question. For short-term rentals, are any of you aware that the property will be considered as a commercial property and HST will be applicable added on top of the sale price when it's for sale to be paid to the seller? So Gillian, you said you answered that one?
Well, I mean, I said that I was aware that that's a thing, but I just thought I'd let the short-term rental experts weigh in
Experts.
on that as well. I just,
Yeah. That's so cute. The way Victoria was looking on my screen, Gillian, you're at the top, and it looked like Victoria was looking up at Gillian like the Brady Bunch. It
I was
was
just gonna
so
say the
cute.
Brady Bunch.
Do you want to jump in there, Victoria, and talk a little bit about the HST and kind of what that looks like?
I always consider the HST, certainly, but honestly, that's something that I take to my accountant to make sure that they're advising me properly on that. And so if I am looking at buying, like, especially with the motel, for example, we knew that HST would be attached to that. We had already gotten an HST number, so we had that upon closing, and then we made sure that our accountant. However, I do know that sometimes if you do go and buy a short-term rental or a single family home that you want to have as a short-term rental, you have to be very careful about the numbers with HST. And sometimes properties aren't actually working financially for that. So honestly, take it to your accountant and then have them crunch those numbers for you, but you can expect that HST will be applied.
but
Absolutely.
I think they're asking about it on a sale of the property. So a lot of people aren't thinking that the seller needs to pay HST when you sell. It's not about gathering HST for your,
Yes, well, it's going to be applied to the property so that now it's something that you have to consider on both ends, like the purchase and then
yeah,
on the sale of it. And
yeah.
it won't make sense for the buyer of that property either. And so, yeah, it can be a waterfall effect.
Yeah.
That your accountant should be able to tell you the long-term plan and think about that. And so ask these questions. How long do I keep it for, and what happens when I sell it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That was great. Uh Pam said, Pam was asking about the recordings for the summit because she wants to go to the Rockstar event on October 14th. I feel you, Pam. I really wanted to go too, but you know where I'll be. So the way the summit works is the recordings are available immediately after the session finishes. So literally 5 minutes after the session finishes, you can hop in and watch the recordings. You'll be able to watch it on the platform for 30 days. Afterwards, you can still interact and message with people and network and everything. And then after that point, then you will have access to the summit recordings on the Kartra platform that Cory sets up for us. All right. Let's see. There's a couple of questions here that I really liked. Oh, what does your process look like when you look for new markets? And this was specifically asked about short-term rentals, but I actually think it's a fantastic question to ask for everybody. So when you're looking for student rentals or short-term rentals, or when you're thinking for Michael and Cory, for the two of you with multifamilies, how do you decide where you're going to invest next? Especially if you're in a situation like some of us might be right now, where what we did before, like the BRRRR strategy, is not working anymore and we need to go in a different direction. So Michael, do you want to jump in and start us off on that?
Yeah, I think there's been a few things that have kind of changed, and thanks to COVID, where in the past it used to be kind of where jobs used to be created. That was one of the big indicators, is where are the jobs and where are people going to move to. The moving component is still an important part, but in this day and age, people are able to work from Toronto, but at the same time, their head office is now in Edmonton. So why do I have to live in Toronto if I can work from Edmonton, because it's so much cheaper? So the big indicator for myself is, number one is affordability. So for me, it's like understanding the affordability markets. There's a great platform. If you go to RBC Economics, lots of great stats there talking about affordability index. And so for me, is where are some of the more affordable places to be, or where are some of the more affordable markets to be looking at, number one. And the second part is migration. That's the biggest one. And it's not just in migration, it's immigration. As we all know, the immigration is insane, no offense. But at the same time, it's a double whammy with markets that are also seeing in migration from different provinces because of affordability. So for me, number one and number two is affordability, and the second one is migration trends. And for me as a multifamily investor, I like that because if I continue to see those trends, that means rents are going to continue to go up, which means valuations goes up, and it puts a little more money in my pocket for my kids to spend on my behalf. So,
And they will, like it's their job. Fantastic. What about you, Gillian?
Oh, it's much of the same thing, right? I mean, it's really just making sure I can find something that ticks all those boxes like Mike was talking about, but also has, secondary schools. So I just found a new market in New Brunswick. It has a college, a university, but also has a regional hospital, also has a CN rail station that goes across Canada and down through the States. There's a distribution center. Like, you're just looking at the economics. It has to make sense. But again, affordability is number one thing for me right now. And do the rents there support a good cash flow environment? And turns out you can actually buy places that are less expensive than Ontario with rents that are pretty comparable. So all of a sudden your cash flow story changes hugely, right? Like, it's all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Noelle, do you want to give it a go again? Answer.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Can you hear me all right now?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, good. So I would say something to look out for is because, well, I'm in Canada, and I'm in a wine country in Canada. So something that I've run into is that we're living in a very seasonal place for short-term rentals, as are most of us if we're in Canada. And so just diversifying in that way, like if you're doing a short-term rental in a seasonal place, I would look for a place near a hospital, because then you can accommodate travel nurses in your down season who might want the place for 6 to 8 weeks. And so we've had a lot of success with those travel nurses, and I love accommodating them because they're actually helping our local community. And then, you might want to diversify by looking somewhere else, like Florida, for instance, or somewhere that would be, that would offset those that seasonality. So I would say, look for places that could operate year round, or just fractionalize so that your seasons are offset by a different location.
Absolutely. Thank you. Victoria, would you like to add to that?
I would say that to start looking at different markets, I would almost back it up a bit to find out, well, what type of property are we thinking about? And then even one step further back, how does it match with your values, your risk tolerance, your skills, and your ability? And so once you lock that in, then you can have a number of different types of property avatars that you're interested in, and then start to look at the market based on that, because the markets are different for different types of properties. And you want to make sure that you're not just following the herd and going to Edmonton because everybody's going to Edmonton right now. If you're doing short-term rentals, maybe that's not going to be the best fit. So you really want to make sure that you lock in the type of property or the umbrella, and then choose your market. And then based on what is available in the market, is it the best fit? And so you can start to weed some places out.
Yeah. I think people don't spend enough time thinking about what type of tenants they want to have, like who they want to work with too. This was one of my biggest discoveries, having a property management company where I managed everything from, low end multi-units all the way up to, the furnished all-inclusive high-end renting to executives. I found that even though the higher end units cost me more initially to buy, the long-term management and running of them was significantly less.
Absolutely.
Did you? Yeah. So I'm not the only one who discovered that. That's not unique.
And especially when you're long distance investing, on top of that, the tenant profile really matters. Your communication skills, your team building skills, how you manage, and because you have to manage the managers at the end of the day, especially when you start scaling. So lots of things to consider when you start looking outside your backyard. I highly recommend it, but you really do need to make sure that you think about your personality and your abilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said. Especially across the country. I mean, I ran into that even going from Alberta to Saskatchewan, where I was from. in multifamily, but I went in there with the blinders on. I wasn't doing rental surveys. I didn't properly screen my property managers. I just assumed because I was so awesome, everything was going to work there. Well, I learned a very hard lesson that it does not. You know, you mentioned Alberta. A lot of people come into Alberta thinking, okay, just because prices are lower, it's going to automatically cash flow. No, I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort to set up a team in a different niche, right? I've seen it pulled off a lot, but especially with people that are buying commercial or multifamily, it's like a dart on dartboard. Oh, I want to buy something in Halifax. I want to buy something in Yukon. I want to buy something, you know, they're all over the country without any idea how they're going to manage it. So I agree. You have to diversify, you know, in one location. Cause yeah, I got stung when the oil crashed, when Kelowna went through the roof. I should have had more property in my hometown, right? Extreme rental crunch here now. And now I'm going to get into student rentals here. So I weigh these two markets, but I'm doing it much more carefully than I was before. Learn some very valuable lessons.
Absolutely. What do you think, Cory? We've got a couple more sessions, a couple more questions here. One is for Noelle, and I think Victoria and Gillian, you guys were kind of working away on the travel nurses. We also answered that live. I think we're good to wrap up, Cory.
Yeah, and Alex, he's am I being a scared baby? Yeah, you're being a scared baby. No, just kidding. I know Alex. He's a dentist from the Maritimes, so I can love to rip him. He's
Would it be
I think
okay
he's in
if
Nova
I
Scotia or New Brunswick. Sorry?
would it be okay if I put my email in the chat? So if people have other questions that pop up for them about student rentals, I'm happy for them to answer offline if they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone feel free to do that. You guys can go ahead and do that while I'm wrapping up here. So I'll just share my screen one more time. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining. That was a power marathon. We successfully got through it in an hour and a half. So again, just on the summit, just to summarize everything we basically discussed. So this is now, I'm thinking, just a little over 3 weeks away. So you really want to get your ticket in, get in this today. You don't want to be miss out on this one. We have such a great show lined up this year, 2 days instead of 3, but you can snap the QR code or the link is in the chat. And leading into next week, we have one more of these webinars that we're going to be talking about. So next week, please join us for Investing by Design. This is going to be all about tech, social media, and creating the life you want. So please join Elizabeth and myself, along with Tony Downey, Gary Hibbert, Adriana Ostapenko, and Megan Hubner. Oh, I knew I was going to screw up one of those names. So please join us next week. This will be the last one of our webinars, October 25th. And on that, here is the contact information for the guests tonight. Again, if they want to add that into the chat, feel free, or if you want to just take a quick screenshot of the connections. This has been a fantastic panel. I've learned a tremendous amount in the last 90 minutes, and I'm so excited for the summit because, again, this is just a small portion of what you're going to hear on the summit. And that's going to do it for me. Elizabeth, do you have any final thoughts?
I didn't, but I'd love to thank everyone so much for coming out this evening and attending our webinar, and also to our amazing speakers for giving up their time and joining us when they committed to doing the summit. The webinars were something Cory and I came up with because we're like, we want people to understand what it's going to feel like to be at the summit. So we're so grateful to all of you. Please do give our speakers a like, a follow on social. Michael and Victoria in particular. Rachel actually does a great job too. So much great information, so much just shared from the heart, you know, not trying to sell, not trying to pitch, not trying to raise funds, but literally just trying to get amazing information out there. So please give them a like and a follow. And thank you so much for joining us, all of our speakers, and as well, all of our attendees.
We picked the best speakers in the world in Canada for this summit. So again, I want to thank you guys, Gillian, Mike, Victoria, Noelle, and Rachel. Yeah, thank you guys for being part of this. I met most of you today for the first time, so I'm really looking forward to co-hosting this event with Elizabeth and seeing you guys' presentations. I'm really excited.
Thank you for
everyone.
having us.
Thanks. What a great
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Great session. Appreciate it.